Well, good Sunday morning and happy Trinity Sunday. I just want to take a little informal organ postlude for this week. Normally, postludes and preludes are kind of what they're called voluntaries, in the sense that really it's the discretion of the organist or instrumentalist playing them as to what is done on a Sunday. And there are particular Sundays where a particular hymn may be sung, where a chorale prelude may be appropriate. And for this Trinity Sunday, for all Trinity Sundays, I've played this Bach fugue. Mostly because Bach was very, very into numerology, or the use of numbers and symbolism in it. And in this fugue, it is rife with Trinity symbolism, so it's become my de facto Trinity Sunday fugue postlude. And so I just want to give you a little foretaste of what you're listening to. Since I've been here over the past 3 years, I've used this as the postlude, so there is rhyme and reason to it. It's not just random. The fugue comes from this book, the Clavier-Übung III, which in German it just means keyboard exercises. But this particular collection is the entire German Mass. So you can imagine most of the Roman Mass made its way into Lutheran Mass, Kyrie, Sanctus, and as such, much like our ordinary. And Bach wrote settings because all of these settings musically had a certain tune that went with it, either a German tune or an ancient chant. And so there are 21. So think to yourself, Trinitarian 21, and the 21 chorale preludes. There are 4 duets and a prelude and fugue, so a total of 27 pieces, or 3 times 3 times 3, 3 cubed. And so that's the beginning of the Trinity segment of it. And throughout, a lot of these chorale preludes have 3 settings of them. And this prelude and fugue, in and of themselves, have Trinity symbolism. A fugue, first of all, is a very ancient, not improvisational, but a compositional technique in which it's very much like a canon. One voice will start, another one will follow, but unlike a canon, it's not very strict in that it follows exactly. What is given is the statement of the fugue subject, followed by a counter subject upon which the second voice enters. There are 5 voices in this fugue for the most part. The first and third fugue have 5 voices, and the middle fugue has 4. So we have all of the entrances of the fugue, and then we have a nice little cadence, or like the end of a musical sentence, and there's some development. So the first is the Trinitarian. We're in the key of E flat major, so that's 3 flats. So 3 for Trinity. Then we have 3 major sections in this one fugue. A first fugue, which is very reminiscent of the hymn tune that we in English-speaking countries know as St. Anne. Therefore, oftentimes this piece is called the St. Anne fugue, although Mr. Croft, who penned the tune St. Anne, was alive at the same time as Bach, but there's really no cross-pollination. There's no way that Germanic Bach would have known what English Croft was doing in the 1730s. So there's that little fugue. And that fugue kind of is heard throughout the rest of the 2 other fugues. So we have a nice ending of the first fugue, which is very grand. And the second one is a very light, sprightly, and faster, with lots of continuous eighth notes. And it has its own fugue subject, so it gets developed in 4 voices. We have a nice, pretty cadence. And after that major cadence, the first theme comes back in. And again, we end in a nice little cadence at the very end. And then we have the third fugue, which is called a jig. And in the Baroque practice, the jig was the last of 5 dance movements that you would have. In the other 4, kind of, depending on the composer, differed. A gavotte, à la brève are such common names. And the 5th was almost always a jig, especially in Bach's pieces. So it's a dance. It's in 12/8. So think 4 big beats subdivided into 3, or think rock music and jazz. And that's kind of where the jig takes, well, it's where jazz takes its roots from originally. And this third fugue kind of is the earworm of the piece, I find. And so in the midst of this third fugue, the first theme is heard in it. So then we get, that's why it's a triple fugue. This first theme is heard throughout the entirety of the second fugue and into the third, not in its entirety, but parts. And there are certain points, especially in the pedal, where the pedal entrance has voice number 5 of the third fugue, bum, 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 ti-ti-ta-ta-ta, and then the first fugue theme comes in immediately afterwards. So it's what we call double counterpoint. And it's kind of pervasive. This is very typical of Bach writing. This piece dates mostly to the 1730s, so it's considered mature Bach. Every note kind of has its own purpose and meaning. There's no filler. And it was published in 1739. So if we want to continue our Trinitarian theme, the Clavier-Übung III, which this is the last piece of, was published in September 3 times 3 times 3 of 1739. So 3 and 9 divisible by 3. So if you want to take the symbolism even further, which I think is kind of ridiculous, it goes to even the dates. There are further Trinitarian things, but for sake of time and for the sake of me trying not to theory nerd out to you sitting over there in your pajamas sipping your coffee, you can talk to me privately about that, and we'll talk about further Trinitarian symbolism in there. But you get the general gist, so there is rhyme and reason why I play this piece on Trinity Sunday. So here we go.